Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. Coming to you here, I am Tommy, one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
Okay, we're in our, I guess you'd say, last post-game analysis of this season.
Last episode of this season, really. Last regular season episode.
The next
of this
episode,
season.
I guess you could call it off-season episode. Because there will still be those.
So if you hadn't noticed by our tone and our verbiage, the Packers...
Spoiler alert!
If you missed the game, the Packers have been eliminated from postseason contention officially by the Lions, losing at home at Lambeau 20-16, falling to 8-9 on the year, ending their season much in the same way that it began, kind of with a thud. I would say.
Yep.
So
and that thud was not the sound of one of the Packers' tackles.
No.
Somebody making a tackle for the Packers.
Not particularly. Yeah, bit of ending, kind of emblematic of the season as a whole, Dad, as we get into our gut checks here. I think just the way that this game went just demonstrated that the Packers were not that good a team. They're a very average team this year. 8-9 seems like about the record they deserved. Maybe 7-10. Maybe a win here, a win there. You make it into the playoffs, but this team was deeply flawed in a lot of different ways. It was nice to go on that run at the end, although we'll talk about how that run may not have been so great for them, at least for draft positioning, but it is what it is.
Still fun.
It was still fun. We'll always have that win against the Vikings.
Yeah.
Which is
better
nice.
It's better than another 4 weeks of misery.
Exactly, I suppose. But would have been nice to pick in the top 10. But yeah, so
the Bears they had to lose 10 in a row and managed to back their way into the number 1 overall pick.
Yep. I think if the Packers had lost if you had told me the Packers were going to miss the playoffs anyways, I would say lose 4 of them, beat the Vikings, and then take your better draft position would have been my personal choice on that route. But anyway, just kind of gut check wise, and the fact that they didn't get to see Love at all in this sequence of games is also really painful. But yeah, it is what it is, I think, is my gut check. They didn't deserve to win this game. They didn't deserve to make the playoffs. They were a flawed team. It happens. That's kind of my gut check.
My gut check is they've just showed that they cannot maintain a good level of play without eventually making a mistake. I mean, and this was the sort of the season that they had so many games where eventually they just screwed up. And they have, large stretches where it's good enough play to win a lot of the game, but just enough blown assignments, tackles, turnovers, whatever, that they end up losing. And they basically reverted. But they reverted to what they did during the 5-game losing streak.
Not only will they eventually make a mistake, they are not the type of team that can
overcome a mistake.
Not even just overcome a mistake, because I feel like that's touching on the mental side too, which might be accurate, I think. But I was specifically talking. They are not the type of team where they can make a few mistakes and still win a game. I'm not talking about overcoming. I'm talking about how the Chiefs. I'm talking about how the Chiefs will they'll throw a pick and then they'll score a 60-yard touchdown. They'll still put up 34 if they throw 2 picks or have a fumble. The Packers need to have essentially 4 straight quarters of flawless football this season, and then they would be able to win a game. If they made a mistake in the middle there, it just they needed to play almost perfect to win a lot of these games.
Well, that's exactly what I mean by overcome a mistake. I don't mean a mental hurdle. I mean their play is good enough where if they make a mistake, they can just brush it off. Whatever, we're going to score anyway. I don't mean that they can't, mentally put themselves together and get back on track after a mistake. I just mean that they're...
To be fair, I mean that's too.
But that's not what I was referring to anyway.
That they do that also. They do.
Oh, we're done.
These things. That's it. Time to go home, everyone. I mean, yeah, it's just
where are my clubs?
They had all the 1, 2, 3 Cancun. They had all of the I mean, they just weren't good. They were kind of good sometimes, but no consistency.
You know what the quote? You know what the quote is for this? What the quote is? They are
who we thought
they were.
Yes, they are 100%
Right?
who we thought they were. They are an average team. They will maybe win a couple games they shouldn't, maybe lose a couple games they shouldn't, look wildly inconsistent game to game and within the game itself, quarter to quarter, play to play, drive to drive. They're just not a good enough team, and it's kind of sucks when the aspirations and expectations were way higher than that.
Yep.
Yeah, because, I mean, they weren't better than the Lions yesterday. They just weren't.
They weren't.
Like, the Lions were much better.
They weren't coached as well as the Lions.
No.
The Lions don't make as many blunders as the Packers do.
The only, like, way in which the Packers were better than the Lions yesterday is, like, maybe on paper. Like, maybe you have some better players. Like,
they needed to play paper football. They needed to each get the little triangle, play a little paper football. They're better on paper.
The thing is, I mean, they got outmatched. They got out physical. They weren't as disciplined. They weren't as well coached. They were worse in almost every single way they could be yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, right? Did you have anything else for the gut check? How this game made you feel? How you feel about the Packers going forward?
I was anxious going in. I was anxious by halves, like how we should be up more and we're not. This almost always bodes ill.
Poorly, yes. I knew as soon as they didn't capitalize. I knew. That's incorrect. I felt bad as soon as they started not capitalizing on these drives.
Sense of impending doom.
Because it just felt like if you don't put this away, like they're just going to hang around and it's going to be the same thing as last time where you couldn't put it away and they just hung around. And the same thing
as it was against the Commanders, against the Giants, all these teams that we led and failed to put away and build up the lead when we had the chance and then let them win.
Yeah, and it feels like just, what is it? I mean, they have to be just top to bottom, front to back, one of the worst situational football teams on offense and defense I've ever seen. Just so poor on third downs, fourth downs, goal to go, red zone, in the opponent's half, and then on defense to end like 2 minutes left in the first half, one of the worst defenses ever. Just situation, like third down defense, usually, it was pretty decent today, or pretty decent against the Lions, but usually just horrible. I mean, just a really bad situational football team. And that kind of is because I feel like in a lot of other aspects they're decent or to good, and then just situationally horrific. And it makes you wonder on offense, at least situationally, how much it's just been, Devontae, go get open. Yeah, you got this, buddy.
I guess that was the offense. Was that the offense the last 3 years?
I mean, that was certainly the third down offense, and that was definitely the red zone offense.
And I was gonna say, in the red zone, don't forget the red zone offense
and the goal to go offense. I mean. It was pretty much just like choice and option routes for Devontae. Just make it work, get open. I mean, and some nice drawn up stuff here and there, but I think
often that's taking advantage of the fact that Devontae is perhaps getting so much attention.
I mean, they did, but also they did a really good job. Like they used to do a good job at least putting him in positions to get open easily, like having him in motion and getting him those one-on-one.
What did they say at one point at the last year? Is like, well, basically 90% of our plays involved Devontae or in some way, something like that.
I can't remember.
It was something like that.
Yeah, should we get into this?
Let's get into the meat of what we wanted to see, what we saw.
Yeah, so I guess we can start with the offense. You want to start with the offense?
Sure, and as usual, I had more things I wanted to see from the offense than you do. I guess I'm just
given up faith in the offense.
More offensive.
I had given up faith in the offense. I knew they were going to have to really hold Detroit down and strangle them to win this game. I felt like they would have been able to run the ball better, but let's start with the good and end with the bad, and
but
get
I did
the
have
season
a few
behind
things.
us, Dad.
I wanted. Let's start with the good and end with the bad.
Go ahead with the things that you wanted, and then we'll go.
So I wanted to see them run the ball a lot with Jones and Dillon. It was
not for lack of trying. I mean,
how many total carries did they have?
They couldn't move it. I think it's 24 total.
21 to Jones and Dillon, 21.
Is that it? Just
carries.
21?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then that Detroit's coverage grades were bad against tight ends and running backs, and so I was hoping to see them take advantage of that. I think they were able to use Tunyon a bit, but passes to the running backs, Jones had 3 catches. Dillon had
2 targets.
0.
He had 2 targets.
3 targets.
3 targets?
3 targets, no catches.
Yeah. I mean, he had that one
according to Yahoo Sports.
He had that one really painful drop. That really hurt.
Yep. Maybe he had 2 drops? Well, he had at least one.
At least
really
one.
Right in the hands.
But,
and then the last thing that I thought Detroit was bad by DVOA at defending deep shots. And, well, they had that fantastic catch by Watson, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah. So
let's
start with it. Let's start with the
things?
positives. And I think the biggest positive in this game was Watson. I mean, he was a star in this game. He had 5 catches on 6 targets for 104 yards, 2 carries for 12 yards. And then that included, like you said, that huge 45-yard catch to set up the go-ahead touchdown late in the game in the late third quarter. I mean, he was their best player on any side of the ball today. He was a go-to guy. I wish they would have gotten him more targets. I mean, he was clearly the biggest mismatch they had. He was their best ball carrier, too. I mean, he was their best player on offense, and I think he is like right on that cusp where if he has a good year next year, he's flirting with stardom. He was.
Oh, I think one thing to do that is they try to get him to be more of a volume player, involve him in all levels of the field, and get him the ball. More like double-digit targets per game kind of level.
That's what I'm saying is they needed to get him the ball more. It's tough because this offense is it's a low-volume passing offense as is, and they have a lot of weapons they want to spread the ball around to. He did, I believe, lead the team in targets tied with Lazard, so he's getting like a good amount of work relative to the rest of the offense, but they definitely could pump up his target numbers next year for sure. They need to because he was their best player.
Part of it is their pace of play, so they just don't run very many plays.
I said we're gonna wait on the bads. We're gonna wait on that. We're sticking with the good stuff first.
That's why his in terms of like volume numbers aren't coming.
They have to be the slowest damn offense I've ever seen. My goodness, they're just turtle-esque in their ability to move the ball downfield. Beyond that, though, for me, positives, I thought Tunyon and Cobb were pretty solid. 5 catches total on 5 targets between them for 40 yards. Cobb had a really nice catch on the sideline that was very vintage Cobb. They were just very solid. It kind of just speaks to the fact that the offense, I think, in general, was really horrific today, or in this game.
Yeah.
And it was just, the offense was so bad in this game. But anyway, continue with some positives, please.
Yes, so we're searching. So I also had Watson, of course, and I just want to mention that 45-yard catch. They actually threw the flag for the DPI. It was so egregious as they're grabbing and pulling one arm down and tackling him before the ball gets there, and he still catches it. It was just a fantastic play.
I'm just happy he caught it so it can go in his stats. That's fun for me.
True. I think he got him over 600 yards on the season, I think.
That's a good question. I can look that while you vamp a little bit. Go ahead and go with your other positives. I'll check that.
So I also felt like Tunyon did a few nice things. He had that really nice catch for the third down conversion, and he caught all 3 of his targets. So he had a not a fantastic game, but he had a decent game. And then Lazard had some good run blocking. He might have been their highest graded run blocker for the game.
Not saying much.
But, no, considering, I'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But he also caught 4 of his 6 targets for 41 yards and their only touchdown, though he did also have a bad drop. So that's what I could find for the good. I couldn't really find much to be excited about from anybody else in the offense.
Yeah, and that did end up with...
Rodgers, I should say Rodgers' best throw of the day was incomplete, a drop.
Yeah,
which we could talk about.
I think it ended up being 41 catches for 600 yards and 7 touchdowns for Watson on the year. Very, very solid rookie year, especially when you consider the amount of games he missed due to injury. That's going to be the biggest thing to clean up for him, I think. But it sounds like we're ready to move on to some of the negatives for the offense. Like I teased, the offense was awful today. I thought it was terrible, top to bottom. I was really frustrated because this was not a particularly strong defense they were going against. Pretty weak D-line by most metrics. Very weak secondary, missing their best corner by most metrics. I mean, without Okuda there, just specifically who I'm talking about. This was not a very good defense, and they were a terrible offense. They looked horrible. I mean, I have so many things written down. Coaching, everything seems so difficult, and they have to be just such the slowest offense in the league. I mean, in terms of like how many seconds it takes them to get like 10 yards, like they are like 45 seconds to run the play and then a 3-yard play, 45 seconds to run the play and then a 4-yard play, 45 seconds to run the play and then a 3-yard play, and that's their 10 yards. And they try and do that essentially 7 times in a row, and that's how they're going to score. Like that's the plan on offense. It seems like some mind-numbing play calls from the coaching staff, including most evidently the Lazard end-around handoff on 4th down and 4th and inches when there's no one over the center, so you can just sneak it right up the middle. It's wide open. Every team in the league does this now, where if it's 4th and less than 1, you just put a guy behind the quarterback and you push him through the line, and it's free every single time. We actually did it later in the game.
I had that. It's like, and I didn't hate going for it, even though it was in our own territory. I just hated the play call. And yeah, they showed how easy it was to get the QB sneak to work by doing it later in the game.
So it's not even that they're worried about Rodgers' thumb. They were fully ready to do it, but for some reason at your own 31-yard line, you won't do it? Like, what are we doing?
I just feel like, and I have this in my notes, like, stop trying to show everybody in the world how clever you are with these cute plays and just take the easy yards.
Yeah, it's just bad. And then beyond that, there's a few disappointments in this game for me. I think one of the biggest disappointments was the offensive line in this game was awful. They were so bad in so many facets. Going against a below average to bad defensive line in their own right, they struggled in almost every facet, especially in run blocking. Between Jones and Dillon, Packers had 21 carries for 81 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. This was not a good run defense. Jenkins, Myers, Bakhtiari, and Nyman all graded out below average in run blocking per PFF. And meanwhile, the right side of the line got absolutely obliterated in pass protection. According to PFF, Nyman allowed 3 pressures. He only played like 11 snaps. Tom allowed 3 pressures, so that's 6 pressures at just your right tackle spot is 6 pressures. And then Runyon allowed 2 more. Yep. And so for that right side of the line, they're accounting for 2/3 of all the pressures Detroit had. I mean, the offensive line should have been able to bully Detroit's line. Couldn't get any movement in the run game. Couldn't protect Rodgers. He got hit 7 times tonight. Like that.
I did get that number down, but I had a lot of the same notes you did on the blocking.
The only one of them that actually, like I would say, showed up in this game was Bakhtiari. Bakhtiari was pretty good in this game, especially in pass protection. But any pass rusher who went over
blocking
was not good. But any pass rusher who went over to the right side immediately got pressure. And then the interior D-line, I mean, Isaiah Buggs made Elton Jenkins look tiny twice in a row. Aleem McNeil absolutely blew up Josh Myers like 2 or 3 different times. Like, he looked like he was way more athletic than anyone in the... I mean, he beat Zach Tom to the spot one time as well on a run play. They couldn't handle Detroit's front, and Detroit's front is not any good. It's disrespectful to say that, but statistically, they have not been any good.
And the Packers have really struggled against them. I think that's one of the reasons why they have so much trouble scoring in the red zone against Detroit. It's not just this game. Why do they have so much trouble against this defense, which is generally not good? And I had a lot of the same things. Like the O-line, only Tom was slightly above average in run grade blocking. Runyon was average, and all the rest were below average to poor. That's 6 linemen total, since Lyman's included in this. And they at the right side of the line got worked by Aiden Hutchinson, making him look like a superstar. And Aleem McNeil, I heard his name kept called over and over again on the broadcast because he was always in the backfield making a play somewhere.
Just terrible offensive line play for the whole game. And you have a lot of resources tied up there. Like and
they had
players who had played well.
They've been playing well for like the last 4 weeks. And they seem to be like, oh, hey, they're getting healthy, they're getting it together. The offensive line is coming together, so that means the offense is going to start running smoothly. And then today, this game just totally fell apart.
Horrendous. Like, and not even against super elite competition.
Nope. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, they just pooped. The offensive line just pooped their pants out there whole game. I want to end. Let's end with Rodgers. Let's do him last. The next thing.
Okay, then there's more. I've got more.
I have more also. Dylan was bad. He looked slow all night. He had a really bad drop. No catches on 3 targets. 3.7 yards per carry. Yikes! If that's the plan.
The funny thing is, PFF had him for a pretty good running grade.
It's hard to know because the offensive line was awful.
Right. So I have this so they averaged at less than 4 yards per carry as a group, though their personal grades were both pretty good for Jones and Dylan. It's just that everybody in front of them blocking for them was bad.
Yeah, but I still thought Dylan looked kind of slow tonight. He looked bad in the passing game. I didn't think he had a good game. Dobbs had 2 targets, no catches, 1 pretty bad drop.
That was the best throw of the night. Where I think he just wasn't. Maybe he couldn't see it because the defender was in his way. But it's one of those ear hole helmet throws. It just comes right through the defender, right into his hands.
Yeah, and then
he barely got a finger on it.
I don't want to be too harsh on him because he is just a rookie, and you shouldn't be counting on him to make massive plays to win these type of games. But still not good. And then situational offense. I mean, it's just been their bugaboo all year. It's been so bad. They're just. I mean, third downs. Going into this game, Detroit was allowing a third down conversion rate of 45.83%, which is 30th in the league, according to team rankings. Packers went 4 of 12 on third downs, which is despicable.
4 of 12 against one of the worst third down defenses in the league.
Yes.
That's really yikes.
It's awful. It's horrible. It's horrendous. And then they finishing drives. I mean, tacking on to this situational offense thing. The Packers could have put this game away early. They could have been ready to go home. 5 of their first 6 drives went into Detroit territory, and they scored 9 points on those 5 drives.
Yep, I have those down as field goal, field goal, field goal, fumble, missed field goal, touchdown. So they didn't get a touchdown until their 6th trip into Detroit territory.
Yeah. I mean, it's awful. It's awful. And that fumble from Jones was so deflating. I mean,
which, you want to talk about that?
I mean,
his
it's not the first time
in big games.
It's not the
and
first
his
time.
Third lost fumble of this season, and third elimination. No, not third elimination game in a row with a fumble, but
but NFC Championship game versus Tampa, everyone will remember. It's a big reason they kind of folded in that game. Is coming out of half, at the end of half, they Kevin King, they kind of crapped their pants, and then coming back into the second half, they fumbled the ball in the second play. So
deep in their own territory to give up a score to fall further behind.
And then in this game, I don't want to rag on Jones because he's been their best player all year, and I don't want to pile up on him. But he's done this multiple times now where he's had big fumbles in big games that have really cost the Packers a lot of momentum and made it so that they can't win the game.
The fumble in last year's playoff elimination game was on Mercedes.
Yeah. Just big fumbles in big games from important players and captains on the team. You can't have that. You can't have that if you're going to be a good team. I don't know. Those are my negatives before Rodgers. Do you want to get your non-Rodgers negatives out? Because I feel like
the other thing I'd say about Dobbs is that both of his targets came up as drops, not just 0 for 2, but both of them drops. Though one of them was a little off target, a little low, but probably should have caught it. Other drops from Lazard and Dylan. I had the same thing about converting drives. The only 1 of 3 in the red zone for touchdowns. And that I had the same thing about the drives in Detroit territory that we talked about, which is, just basically continuing the script from last game. It's the same story. They can't convert in the red zone against this team. I don't know why.
They can't, but they couldn't convert in. They're one of the worst red zone offenses in the league, or at least one of the worst goal to go offenses in the league. I need to double check their red zone conversion rates, but they're not good.
Also be.
I mean, I'll vamp a little bit while you look that up.
You could go up on
because it's not just the Lions games. Just look it up real quick.
It's not.
It's not. They've been bad in the red zone and goal to go all year long, and it's I don't know if it's a combination of losing Hackett and losing Devontae.
Just 2 years ago, they were one of the best.
Exactly,
this year,
it's crazy.
They are 24th.
Yeah,
in touchdown percentage in the red zone.
Bottom third, bottom fourth, 25th percentile.
Then the
and beyond
red zone
that,
scoring percentage defense.
And I can tell you what's going to happen,
or Detroit.
too.
Yeah, and Detroit was one of the worst. They're 27th.
In red zone defense?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing.
And we couldn't score them either.
I know what they're going to run when they get down there. They're going to run the ball twice for a yard each time because the offensive line can't get any push. And then it's going to be 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. And they're not going to... Rodgers isn't going to pull the trigger or no one's going to be open. I guess every time.
They'll scramble around and then throw it slightly off target to somebody in the end zone. Like,
the one he did today, or the one he did in this Lions game, like, that's a hard throw. So I'm not too mad at him for that one.
Was it actually off target or was it Dillon not where he expected him to be? Either way.
Who knows? Didn't work either way.
It didn't connect.
Yeah.
Which has been the story of the season. Whose fault is it?
Who
cares?
Knows? Yeah.
Who knows
matter.
who cares? As a team, the team failed. Who cares who to blame? Who cares who to blame? The team failed.
The team failed. Yes. I think that's the tagline on this season? The team failed? Just because there's so many people to blame. Because, like, are you done with your negatives for the offense? Because let's talk Rodgers. Because he was not good in this game.
Yeah, we can go to Rodgers.
He was bad. I'll start. He was bad. Again, he's been bad for 5 straight weeks. And no one's talked about it because they've won the games, but he hasn't been very good. He was 17 of 27 for 205 yards, a touchdown, and a pick today. That's not going to get it done, folks. It's not good enough. Numbers would have been so much worse if Watson doesn't catch a miracle YOLO ball for 45 yards. I mean...
Right, if it was a DPI instead of a completion, he doesn't get those yards.
And he was bad. Rodgers was... I know he was under pressure. The offensive line was not that good. I know the receivers were not amazing in this game. But in the fourth quarter, when they needed him the most, he was 2 of 6 for 12 yards and a pick.
That's 2 yards per attempt plus a pick.
And
I wonder what that QBR would be.
And the pick was despicably bad. The game's not over. It's 3rd down.
It was over after that throw almost.
Well, yeah, but you don't need to throw it up. You don't need to. It's not necessary. You have another down. Why are we throwing it a million miles downfield? There's 3.5 minutes left.
Man, we've had so many of those. Just
throw it up.
Doesn't have a chance.
Just a prayer.
Throw it downfield and see what happens.
He threw
had so many prayers
this season that were never answered.
Nope.
And what were you going to say? It sounded like you had something.
Well, I was going to say that things he threw. So, is Kirby Joseph invisible to Rodgers? He threw 2 picks to him last time.
3 picks on the year,
and there should have been 3 today. He had the drop pick.
That's right.
To Aaron Jones on the right.
Yes.
There was the pick that was canceled by hands to the face.
Yep.
That's still a bad throw by Rodgers. And then the pick that actually finally counted.
They got bailed by the refs, and it didn't matter.
I think it was a real penalty.
Yes, but it's not. It did not affect the play in any way.
It had nothing to do with Rodgers' throw.
They got bailed by a dumb penalty.
Bailed makes it sound like it wasn't legit.
They got bailed by the NFL rulebook.
Yes,
is what they got bailed out by because it had no effect on the play.
It's like, does he not see him there? What is the story? It's like, does Kirby Joseph just have like some kind of mind meld where he knows exactly where he can read where Rodgers is going to throw it better than anybody else because he's like right on the ball every freaking time.
Yeah, and it's just it was terrible. I mean,
and he had other off-target throws. Those are just bad decision throws. But he also had off-target throws into the dirt. A little low, making it hard to convert the catch.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been. I mean, it could still be the thumb, but how many times are you going to keep making excuses for him when he's not even taping the thumb?
They did say, if you heard in the broadcast, they were talking about the
hand
in the last game that it was a little sore or whatever, and then he got hit early on. But you know what?
I'm not here to make excuses for him.
They should have bailed on that thumb and put Love in 10 games ago.
I mean, have you heard? I saw, was it Kyle Malzahn tweeted about Rodgers in fourth quarters of big games the last few years?
No, I didn't see
Have you heard this? So Kyle Malzahn, at Kyle Malzahn on Twitter, tweeted out Rodgers in fourth quarter since 2020 in the games they were knocked out in. NFC Championship game versus Tampa. 4 of 11 for 54 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. This is just the fourth quarters. 2021 divisional versus San Francisco. 4 of 7, 17 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. This game versus Detroit. 2 of 6, 12 yards, no touchdown, 1 pick. Combined, 10 of 24 for 83 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick, 33.9 passer rating, 0.36 air ANY per A. I think it's air net yards per attempt. I mean, it's bad.
We're at like worst. If this was like for a season, we're at worst QB in the league territory with those numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to bash on Rodgers too much. He's done a lot for the organization. He's made them very relevant for the last like 12, 14 years. Won a Super Bowl, won 4 MVPs. It's all fine and dandy. He has been bad this year. And he has been bad in key moments when they've needed him the past couple years. Like, it just feels so rigid with him. Like, when the pressure's on the last few years, it has not been up to the standard of the amount that they are paying him. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah,
I think anyone would agree with you.
And it's interesting, like I think it wasn't just this year. This year's been bad when he's under pressure. His QB rating drops dramatically. But I think it was last year as well. I don't know. I'm not sure if 2020 was the same. Maybe 2020 was not. But he was not good against pressure. But he's good against the blitz. Very good against the blitz, but not good under pressure.
Yeah. And part of that's like the mobility he's losing. Part of it is this time, I think, just not having as good receivers as he's used to. But I mean, come on, man. Like, this is not good. This is not good enough. This was not good enough to win this game. You were part of the problem in this game. You were part of the problem this season. You were very rarely he was very rarely part of the solution in the games they won. Is there a game you would say that you watched this year where you're like, Aaron Rodgers is the reason they won this game?
Probably his best game that mattered would have been Dallas.
Yeah, I think so. I think Dallas, maybe the second Bears game where they came back. Maybe.
Uh-huh.
I mean, very few times for a guy that you're paying $50 million a year.
Yeah, you shouldn't be at well, maybe Mitch Trubisky level is a little bit harsh.
That's a little harsh, but we're at Jimmy Garoppolo level.
Derek Carr level?
He hasn't thrown more than a touchdown in all but 2 games this year. I mean, he threw 5 touchdowns and 3 picks over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a long time since he's had a multi-touchdown week
game.
Yeah,
it just hasn't been good enough. Like, I honestly think they have a better chance of winning this game if Love plays.
Could be.
And at least Love doesn't complain about the offense. Like, did you see after the Vikings game, Rodgers was complaining about all the motion they were using, essentially? He did it tongue-in-cheek. He wasn't, legit complaining, but he was like, all this damn motion. It's like, you scored 41 points! Why do you care how you do it? Why does it matter how the points are scored? I don't care. You scored 27 points, whatever. 14 of those points were on special teams and defense. Whatever. Still more than you scored tonight.
27 sounds good.
Yes.
27 would be sounded really good about now.
Yeah.
So what we need is, just like cowbell, we need more motion.
More motion, but he doesn't like it. And
we need more cowbell. We need more motion.
I'm just tired of the offense being this weird hybrid of Rodgers ball and LaFleur ball, and then it always reverts to Rodgers ball in key moments. And LaFleur's to blame too. I mean, he didn't do a great job coaching this game, but I put a lot of the blame for this game on Rodgers. I just don't think he was good. I mean, the line. There was a lot of problems in this game, but there's a lot of problems in this season. But I think Rodgers, with the amount you're paying him, he can't be one of the problems. He can't be one of the problems.
I think one thing that's become, abundantly clear with Rodgers in the last 3 years, if the offensive line is bad, he cannot put it together.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But even when it's decent,
yeah,
at times he can't. But yeah, especially. I mean, you look back that Niners game, he's got nothing. That Tampa game, he's got pretty much nothing. The tackles are getting killed in both those games. He's getting killed in those games. And then the offensive line didn't move anyone. That's a good point of analysis, Daz. If the offensive line has been bad, he has been really, really bad.
Right. And I think that's, So who's to blame? Is it he just can't do that anymore? So he's not good enough to be that anymore to overcome a bad line. But those a lot of those
which is weird
playoff
though.
statistics that you're quoting also correlate with
Bad
offensive
lines.
line struggle games.
But it's weird though because he doesn't hold the ball that long. Like he really
Except for once in a while.
Yeah,
Pat,
but
pat,
for the most
pat,
part,
pat.
he has like a very quick like snap to release. Like his time to throw is not very high, and it hasn't been the last 2 years. But yeah, maybe once the offensive line starts to crumble, the defense can just start playing him way jammed up, and he's got nothing for him, and he doesn't want to hold it.
And then he only has to hold it long, a few plays.
Yeah,
doesn't have to be that often, and then get buried.
Yeah,
if nobody gets open quick.
And I mean, he only took 2 sacks in this game, which is a minor miracle in itself in some ways. But yeah, I mean, he was bad. But we've talked about Rodgers for a while. Have you got anything else on him, or? I'm fully.
That
team,
was it. The main thing.
I'm fully team. Like, if you can get anything for him in the offseason, go ahead, Goot. Like. It just take a soft rebuild of a year, see if you have anything in love, and go from there. I think. I don't know. Yeah. That's kind of my view.
I could be on board with that plan.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what the specifics look like.
We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason, but let's move on to the defense for this game.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Let's go to the defense was not the reason they lost this game, but they were also not the reason they won this game. Dad, do you want to talk about what we wanted to see from this defense before we break it down?
Yeah, so what I had was to pressure Goff up the middle against their guards, who are weaker than their tackles, get him to move off his spot and hurry him up. And I specifically had play Slayton at the nose and let Kenny Clark go line up a little wider against the guards. So they often had Clark in the in the B gap or out or over the tackle with Slayton inside at the A gap or sometimes nobody over the nose at all. On some of those alignments. And Kenny was able to have some effect in the beginning. But they weren't able to get enough pressure on Goff as I was hoping for. You had a few different things that you were hoping to see from the defense.
Yeah, I wanted to see them limit their running game. Statistically, it wasn't the best running game, and I felt like it would be a good tone to set if they were to make it further, which they didn't, to stop a below-average running game. They succeeded very well in the first half, and then the second half, I think they just ran out of whatever they had for them. The other was keep an eye on the backs in the passing game. They did not do this. And then let Jair follow Amon-Ra to the slot. They didn't do that much, I didn't think, but it kind of worked out fine for them. Amon-Ra wasn't the reason they lost this game. It's not like they got killed by him. Honestly, the defense was not bad in this game. It just wasn't good enough. Let's start with the good, I guess. I don't mind starting if you don't mind, or do you want to go first?
We can go. There is no reason to end this season on the good.
No, go ahead and tell me you're good for the defense because there's a few things. I thought they started the game well.
So yeah, and it had they only gave up the one really explosive play. I'd say it was the one to I think it was Khalif Raymond on the moon ball that Goff that something floating up in the air forever. It's like, how is nobody going to be able to break this up or get a hand on it? But though that was the only one really for an explosive play. They kind of let up
the Jamison Williams 66-yarder. Kinda. That was called back from penalty.
Yeah, he smoked was it Savage?
I can't remember that play.
But there was a holding on it.
That's true. Yeah. We take those.
It was a hold.
Yeah, it was a hold.
They held to Detroit to a half a yard less per play than their average, per teamrankings.com.
It's not bad.
Clark did have some pressures in the first half, making some plays, disrupting a little bit. And, Savage led the team in tackles with 11.
I thought Savage played really well. I thought he was one of their better players.
He had 1 tackle for a loss, 11 total tackles, and he had the only 2 pass breakups.
Yep, and he played a lot of time in the slot, a lot of time in the box.
If only he had been able to grab that ball out between the knees on that ridiculous catch that never hit the ground from Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they're going to
in the second half,
how they're going to deploy him next year because I think he has played a lot better in the slot and the box than he has deep. but they're kind of also without any starting safeties going into next year.
I don't know. How many safeties should we draft this year?
Exactly. Because if he comes down in the slot, they just have no one to play safety. But he hasn't been that good of a safety because they're probably going to lose Amos in the offseason. I don't know. It's a whole big thing. We'll talk about it later.
They could actually save money in the cap by signing him for another year. But that's another story. Who knows what's going to happen there because he's a free agent. And, it's kind of hates. Wyatt Walker both made plays, but totally screwed the pooch at the end. Walker got thrown out, and Wyatt could have been thrown out on the same play. He also comes up and bumps the trainer.
Just
like, oh my God,
we're starting with
so stupid.
We're starting with the positives.
Okay, well, I'm just ready to. I'm done. That was it. So So I'm like, that one straddled the line.
I have more positives for the defense than that. I thought the energy they had early, of all the Packers units, really set the tone. Early, they started the game holding the Lions to drives of 3 plays, 4 yards, 5 plays, 12 yards after a failed 4th down conversion at the Green Bay 31. So pretty much backed up into their own red zone.
Yeah, that's true. Got to give them some props for that.
5 plays, 12 yards, and then 3 plays, 7 yards. So started the game excellently for the defense and really set the tone early against what was a pretty good Lions offense statistically. I thought the D-line played really well in the first half. In the first half, the Lions had just, at least in the run game, in the first half, the Lions had just 8 carries for 25 yards. That's excellent. Beyond that, the third down defense held them to 4 of 12 on third down. Going into the game, they were the 13th best third down offense in the league at 42% of third downs, according to team rankings. That's really solid. And then, like you said, I thought Savage played really well.
I should have given a few more props to their first half defense because they were on the verge of giving up only 3 points for the whole half.
Yep. But once again, let's get to the negatives. I mean, they are one of the it's either one of or the worst defenses with 2 minutes to go in the first half in the entire league. They just melt like wet cardboard at that starting from the 2-minute warning to the end of the half.
And is that scheme?
Yes, I think so. I think that's Joe Barry. And I don't know what to do with Joe Barry because did you see today? Well, let's talk about that.
We can talk about that later. But you want to go through? You want to go through your bad things first? I'll get through mine.
Run defense in the second half was it kind of fell off a cliff. They allowed 4.9 yards per carry in the second half to running backs. The pass rush was really poor. Only 3 hits on Goff all night, and he had a lot of time to throw. A lot of time to throw on a lot of occasions. I get the Lions' offensive line is really good, and the Packers' D-line is without their best player, but that's just another thing that went wrong in this game. I'm not saying it's entirely their fault. They were just not as talented as the Lions' O-line. They could not stop the running backs in the passing game, like we said that they might need to and probably would need to. The Lions running backs combined for 8 catches on 8 targets for 72 yards, 72 of Jared Goff's 234 yards. So almost a third of his total passing yards were all to running backs, as expected, but we couldn't stop him. 7 of those catches and 60 of some of those yards were all DeAndre Swift, who we mentioned in the lead up to this game. They're going to want to throw him the ball, and they did, and we couldn't stop it. And then just discipline, which is just the biggest sign of a poorly coached team. Quay Walker, I mean, what this week of all weeks, you're going to shove a medical...
Let's go attack some, emergency personnel.
Exactly. Possibly emergency responding medical official for the other team, and you're going to shove him while he's trying to get to the Lions player? Are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing? And this is the second time he's been ejected for shoving someone who was not in uniform in the same season. According to Rob Domofsky on Twitter, he is the only player in the last 15 years to be ejected twice in the same season.
That's really surprising.
The only one in 15 years. That's unacceptable. That is a level of discipline for this defense. I mean, obviously it's at least somewhat on him, but I put it to coaching too. Like, it's like the buck stops at some point. Like, that's what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's bad discipline, and it's on the team in general. I had Did you have any more you wanted to, or should I go continue?
I mean, those are my negatives. If you want to touch on the Quay Walker thing, I don't really have much more to say than he's an idiot for that. He went on Twitter and wrote like a very long, it seemed sincere apology, but he's got to get his emotions in check in game, because that's twice that's happened where he is just completely flown off the handle.
I actually have those notes, like, about pushing it twice on a not in uniform person, and that he may need some serious coaching about overreacting to someone touching him. It's like I don't know what the story is. He's like just flies off the handle, loses his cool, and suddenly has to overreact to somebody laying a hand on him in between plays. Like, he can't control himself. It's like, what are you doing? You need to have enough control of yourself here so you don't hurt the team, hurt somebody else, do something even more terrible by interfering with, if somebody actually turned out to be really in need of medical attention. Mind-boggling. But not the only undisciplined penalty. Rasul Douglas, first he's trying to stop them from like kind of what he considered gaming a practice field goal attempt there. And that's
he's not a rookie.
No, and this is something that a lot of coaches, they try to time it so they can get the timeout before they get the snap and get the sort of free practice kick. But what are you doing turning around? And so you walk into the middle, grab the ball, and then when you get pushed, you can't control yourself enough not to slap somebody. It's like 50. It turns into a field goal distance that they've already missed once to essentially an extra point.
Yep.
And give me 3 points. Just more, just lack of discipline, lack of control of your players. Yeah, and this is I put this almost entirely on the coaching staff. You've got these players like flying off the handle, do these stupid. What everybody knows is just mind-bogglingly stupid.
And they even got away with one. Another undisciplined thing where, you remember when Jerron Reed just came in and clotheslined?
Oh, yeah.
Whoever that was.
The same
and
play.
They just didn't call it?
DeAndre Swift is the same play as...
it's the same one as the Quay Walker Devontae. What is the defense doing out there? It's coaching.
So
it's coaching. And the other thing for Joe Barry...
That's Barry, not... I put that one... I mean, that's on Barry and LaFleur. It's on both of them.
Yeah, and the fourth down call at the end to play off coverage is just so...
I've got that one too.
It's amazing.
Once again, yep. Let's give him 7 easy yards when it's 4th and 1. Let's just back up until it's a turnaround and catch.
Let's hope they miss.
And the other thing is, right? Maybe he'll drop it. And once again, though, we could not. The defense could not make the stop with the season on the line. Could not, force a punt with the season on the line.
And it's not even necessarily. I don't even know if it's fair, because honestly, I don't think. I have a lot of feelings about the Joe Barry thing. On the one hand, the defense has massively
I wasn't necessarily blaming that on Joe Barry. That's on the defense as a whole.
Yeah, it's tough because he did make a lot of the changes that people were asking for. He adjusted a lot mid-season. Pretty much every change that people asked for, he implemented in some ways, and the defense benefited from it. A lot of times, he's doing what LaFleur is telling him to do, so it's not entirely his fault. And LaFleur said today that he does not foresee replacing Barry. He thinks he's going to bring him back. What I ultimately come back to is this. Joe Barry, I think, is a fine defensive coordinator. He's okay. The talent on this team is better than a fine defense. The defense has not been the problem this year. I don't think in any way the defense has been the biggest problem on this team. But you can't tell me that they didn't expect more. The defense has a ton of talent on it, and it underperformed in almost every single avenue except for a handful of games, and then statistically in general, it's average. But they have too much talent to be just average.
Here's the question about Joe Barry then. Where would you put the Packers' defensive talent on the league?
In the league?
Top 10?
Well, here's the thing. We have so many guys underperforming as individual talents, it's hard to know.
And where would you put Joe Barry, rank him among defensive coordinators in the league?
I will say I think every team hates their own defensive coordinator except for 2 or 3. Or 3 or 4. Everyone has problems with their own defensive coordinator. I would say, based on resume and current performance, bottom 10, bottom 12.
Right. Is there a reason then to keep a defensive coordinator who is a bottom 10 performer in the league.
But here's I do think he is like open to making adjustments. Like he has made some good adjustments that have been very beneficial to the team, which I think is
so long for it to happen.
Yeah. I
right?
think the biggest reason I want Barry gone is that the talent was too good for this defense to just figure it out sort of at the 12-week mark, right? Like,
yeah. If you have a team that you think is underperforming their talent,
it's coaching.
You usually,
But the talent has been meh, like all year. I think is the other thing. It's like hard to say because at the same time he's coaching around a team that has no pass rush. They got no juice.
Oh yeah,
they don't have anyone who can win up front. Like they got no pass rush. Devontae Campbell has been meh this year. Amos lost a step. Savage has been bad, and they lost one of their starting corners. So it's like he is coaching around some obstacles.
And don't forget that they lost their best pass rusher.
Exactly. Well, that's I tied that into them not having.
And that was actually I can't remember who I heard say this about how they were pretty high up in like pass rush win rate or
I know
percentage
what you're
rate in the first 9 weeks, and then they fell to like the bottom 5 or whatever after Gary got hurt. But I have a couple other things for the bad. We got kind of deep into the Joe Barry of it all for a while.
We're gonna get even deeper into it these next coming episodes. We do.
But I had the same thing about they get very little pressure on Goff with the 1 sack and 2 hits. Preston Smith and Enagbare were mostly invisible. They had almost no impact on the game at all. And the other thing I had, people were talking about, the Packers, like the defense held them to 20. That's actually not that great of a performance. It is entirely mediocre. I could have put this in good because it's kind of right in the middle. On the road, the Lions averaged 19.3 points per game, 3 points below the opponent's defensive average. So Green Bay gave up 20 points, 2 points below their season average. So they're right on. It wasn't exceptional. It wasn't terrible. It was just meh.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the defense made this great overall performance when you sum it all up. They were good in the first half, but then not so good in the second half.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because like I would say it's tough because I think the games they won these past few weeks, Miami, Minnesota, and then the week before Miami was the Bears? I'm getting my timelines.
I think the Bears
confused.
were the first game of the first win, and then
Rams. But
Rams, yes, the Baker Mayfield.
Specifically, Miami and Minnesota, they won those games because of the defense. But it was mostly just the defense being super opportunistic and creating an amount of turnovers that was way outside of the norm. Like they had 4 turnovers in each of those games. In this game, they had none, and they lost.
Right, and this is the thing where if you can only play good defense by getting turnovers,
it's not a good defense.
It's not sustainable. It's going to eventually turn around and bite you. Because if you're giving up yards per play,
the good teams are not going to give you the ball.
Yeah,
they're not going to give you those opportunities.
And the really good defensive teams really reduce your yards per play.
Yeah,
and force you to punt over and over again, and you just get nothing. As opposed to, we'll give you a lot, but then we're going to take the ball away some of the time.
Bend but don't break is not a good defense. You can have an okay defense doing that, but that's like you're only doing that if you're conceding you're not as talented as the other defenses. When you have a talented defense like the Packers were supposed to be, you can't be a bend but don't break defense.
Take it to the other team. Don't say we're going to wait for you to make a mistake. Force them to make the mistake.
They need better D-line play, though. They need better D-linemen. I know Reed and Kenny came along at the end of this year here, and Kenny, I think, should be primed for a bounce-back year next year, hopefully, knock on wood. But they just don't get any disruption up front. They have nothing.
Yeah, but we'll get more from Wyatt next year. I guess we'll see.
Maybe. He didn't. I mean, I think a lot of people, yes, he was pretty good this year. He was pretty solid as a pass rusher. I don't know how much development you can count on from a 24-year-old rookie.
I don't know.
Can you count on him to make a giant leap and be essentially your second best, third best pass rusher for 7 weeks next year? I mean, maybe.
It's hard to tell since he looks good in a small sample size, but that doesn't always carry over.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up this stat from Jacob Morley on Twitter about Devontae Wyatt that I remember I'd seen. So only 10 interior D linemen from the 2022 class. Sorry, from the 2022 class played over 100 pass rush snaps. Devontae Wyatt was one of those 10. With those snaps, he had the best pass rush win rate by over 4%. He had the best pass rush productivity. He had the highest PFF pass rush grade, and he was third in total pressures. So there's definitely something to build on there. But it's only amongst 10 interior D linemen, only rookies. He's the oldest of them, I think. He's one of the older rookies. It's a lot to count on for him going into next year to solve a lot of problems along the D-line. I think they need more investment there.
Yeah. Oh, I agree that they should probably draft D-line and edge rushers for their first couple of picks.
They need safeties too, Dad.
And safeties.
They need receivers too.
I would rather have safeties and another edge rusher over a receiver at this point.
Every mock draft we do for the Packers needs to have an edge rusher, a late round running back.
Yep. I grabbed one in the 5th round today.
And then probably at least a safety or two.
Yep. Possibly two. I agree that this is one of those years where it's Gutekunst, as he often does, doubles
Hammers
up at a position of need.
And you're going to need a tight end from somewhere. Don't know where, but you're going to need one.
Somebody who's got some blocking chops. You want a big tight end with some blocking chops.
Screw blocking. Give me a guy who can go win.
Oh, you think Mercedes is going to be back next year?
I don't care. You can find a Mercedes, you can find a guy like that and pay him the minimum. You don't need to spend primo draft capital on that.
It would be nice to have a legitimate threat in the middle.
And I mean,
game-wrecking tight end.
It's easy for us to say that.
But it might take a couple years.
It's easy for us to say that, though, because, obviously every team wants that. It's probably the most coveted, non-quarterback, non-offensive lineman position.
What would the Falcons take for Kyle Pitts? They didn't use him this year, barely at all.
Probably, there would be a massive bidding war. It's not about how much value he is to them. It's how much every other team would offer for him. He was still very good. He just didn't put up, in terms of market share, target share, yardage share numbers, they used him a lot. They gave him the ball a lot. It's just their offense was no good passing the ball. That's not
they just didn't pass much.
They know
they
what they
very
have.
Run heavy.
But anyway,
it is true that his target share was still high. They just it was a share of a small pie.
It was a share of a small pie, and also he only had 2 completions. None of them were catchable. But anyway, this is not a Falcons podcast. We can pine after Kyle Pitts all we want. We're not going to get him. But anyway,
that's what I think we need. Do we need a Kyle Pitts style player ready to get a bunch of catches in the first year? The answer is yes, we do. We do need that. The chance of us getting that, however,
but the other thing is
really small.
If you're if you want to run Jordan Love out there next year, him having another weapon would be nice. But anyway,
yes,
we're kind of getting to some of our stuff for the off-season podcast. Do you have anything you want to say about the defense, or do you want to sum up special teams? Or
I think I was done with the defense. I think I covered all of my good and bad.
I did
special
too.
teams, I think, was mostly just net neutral.
Yeah.
They did, and the thing is, the Lions special teams is good.
Yeah, I was going to say
it'd be hard to get.
Yeah.
They're one of the highest ranked special teams in the league, and
it's not going to be like the Vikings where the Red Sea just opens up for you.
And they don't. They get a lot of touchbacks. They don't give up many runs. He has one of the highest hang times on kickoffs.
Yeah, they were giving us the opportunity to return them, but they were kicking them straight in the air. And they hung up there for 5.5 seconds.
So Nixon had 20 yards per return. That's okay. I think I meant to double check this, but I heard maybe had 1,000 yards returning for the season. I meant to look to see how that would rank. I think it was Cassidy Hill. I heard saying that today.
And Crosby was solid.
And I meant to look up how that finished in the league. And Crosby, he made three field goals, a 48-yarder, 49-yarder, but he was made those for 48 and 49. So was trying to kick a field goal from 53 a good idea?
Well, you see, LaFleur was like, "You want to punt? You want to go for it? No." And so they kicked the field goal. They showed him on the sideline. You kind of read his lips. It was 4th and 7.
So that's kind of all I had on the
special teams. Yeah. Well, let's start wrapping this up because we're going for one of our longer episodes. Player of the game, I think it's no doubt Christian Watson. Like, is there
I
anyone
had
else?
Christian Watson as well. He's just looking better and better.
Yeah.
Right?
I think there's nothing really to say there. I mean, it's a combination of, at over 100 yards in an elimination game when they didn't even throw the ball that well, and everyone else was not very good. So it's a pretty easy choice for me. Beyond that, Dad.
Yes, and in fact, Keyshawn Nixon did lead the league in return yardage.
Hey, we might get an All-Pro guy out of there.
1,009 yards return yards, first in the league,
Nice.
despite only doing the returning for like half the year.
Well, we'll always have Nixon for this year. We'll always have, that was a fun Vikings game we had. We'll always have the Christian Watson stretch where he had like 8 touchdowns in 4 games. We'll always have those moments from this year. But Dad, I just wanted to say thank you for being a great co-host this year as we started the Father Son Packers podcast.
Yeah.
As we did our 2 episodes a week through thick and thin, through wins against the Cowboys and losses against the Lions. We did our whole season, and there's more to come.
Yep. This is the first Packers season. We're not finished with the first year yet of the Father Son Packers podcast, but through the first Packers season of the Father Son Packers podcast. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in. And we got more coming. Just because the Packers season is done doesn't mean that we're done. So just kind of letting you know what our off-season plan is. We are going to start doing 1 episode a week throughout the off-season until the season picks back up, talking about Packers off-season moves, Packers off-season needs, what we think is going to be done about the coaching staff, what we think is going to be done about the roster, and we're going to go deep dive into the draft. Me and my dad both really, really enjoy the NFL draft. It's one of our favorite things. I actually like it more than the games itself. It's more fun to me. So we're going to be talking a lot about...
It's less stressful.
Less stressful. We're going to be talking a lot about prospects we like, fits we like with the Packers, when they have meetings with players, the Combine, the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine Bowl, all that stuff. But so yeah, come check us out over the offseason if you want kind of a Packers-centric offseason podcast and draft podcast. We'll be bringing good content to you once a week, and we would really appreciate if you check us out. At Father Son Packer on Twitter, by the way, if you want to follow when those episodes are coming out. Father Son Packers podcast on YouTube. Come subscribe if you enjoy us. We also have our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. Dad, any last closing remarks for our listeners?
I guess have a great off season. Enjoy whatever you're going to do now that you're not going to be watching Packers games.
And you're not beholden to watching the Packers.
And
until next time,
get outside, enjoy some fresh air.
Yep, touch some grass, as they say.
touch some grass.
But
and
thanks again. Yeah, so much for listening.
And go Pack, go.
And go Pack, go.